Hi, guys.
Good morning, everyone. Because of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, we continue to hear more good news across the country. Americans are optimistic. They're confident that they are going to see better, higher-paying jobs. Families across the country are seeing their energy bills come down as utility companies are cutting rates. And in February, an estimated 90% of Americans will see their take-home pay increase. As I travel around Eastern Washington and I hear about families, especially those that are living paycheck to paycheck, this is making a big difference. It's also making a big deal in Minnesota's 2nd District, where Congressman Jason Lewis is from. He just toured a Home Depot and was talking to some of the employees at Home Depot about the impact of the tax reform on them, and they were excited about increased paychecks. They were excited about being able to pay and save for their mortgages, college tuition. It is really making an impact for them in their pocketbooks. So despite the out-of-touch rhetoric that we're hearing from the defenders of the status quo, this isn't Armageddon. It isn't crumbs, and it isn't pathetic. It's real relief for hardworking men and women that this country has been seeking. The Tax Cuts and the Jobs Act was really an opportunity for the Democrats to join us in delivering bigger paychecks to the American people. And as they struggled to explain why they didn't support this overhaul, long overdue overhaul of a broken tax code, our focus continues to be on a better future for all Americans and families. This week, we'll also consider the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act. This is about kids, babies that are born alive. Is historically received bipartisan support, and I'm excited to help welcome families that have traveled from Eastern Washington for the 45th Annual March for Life. We're also continuing discussions on government funding, a 6-year reauthorization of CHIP, and ensuring our men and women serving on the front lines at this very moment have the resources that they need as the terror threats continue. These are really our most basic and fundamental responsibilities that we have serving in the House. And I call upon the Democrats to stop the obstruction, stop the games, and join us in getting it done. And with that, I'll turn it over to Congressman Lewis.
Thank you, Kathy, and welcome. I am Congressman Jason Lewis, Minnesota 2, and it is wonderful to be here to talk about the single most important thing happening right now in America. But enough about the Minnesota Vikings and the playoff game on Sunday. Let's talk a little bit about tax reform. You know, we had history on our side in tax reform. If you look at the 20s and the 60s and the 80s, every time we get this rising tide when labor and capital come together and increase productivity in the private sector. Yesterday, I was at the Home Depot in Minnesota 2, and I was talking to the manager, and he was talking about how wonderful it's going to be for Home Depot. But you know the people that were really excited? The associates of Home Depot, because they engage in profit sharing. They're stockholders. Their 401ks are going up. You know, in the tax bill, we also even the balance between equity financing and debt financing. They're going to get more share of ownership in this opportunity society. That's what we've done with this tax bill, and that's why the folks at Home Depot were excited. That's why DTN, another company in Minnesota too, has they published something called the Progressive Farmer. I'm trying to get them to change it to the Conservative Farmer, but that's a long haul. But nevertheless, the Progressive Farmer publisher just gave a $1,000 bonus to 700 employees right there in Minnesota too. We have seen $1 billion, I should say, in bonuses to 1 million people. All of which we were told before we passed the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, that couldn't happen. It wasn't good. We went back to the Jimmy Carter malaise days. We've reached the pinnacle of growth. And now we're not growing at 1.5%. We're not growing at 1.6%. We're growing at 3.3%, and we're going to 4%. That's what this is about, getting median wages back up to where they should be. A $1,000 bonus is not a crumb. And in Minnesota, too, the average family will get a tax relief cut of $3,800. What is that, 3.5 crumbs? I don't think so. That's a vacation. That's retirement. That's a college education. You know what the minority leader said was just plain offensive. This is working. And you know, later this week, we're going to continue the job. We're not going to shut the government down. We're going to keep it open. We're going to reauthorize chips, and we're going to repeal a medical device tax that is hurting Minnesota big time. And then we're going to send it over to the Senate, and the Senate is going to have to decide, the Senate Democrats, whether they want to shut the government down. I don't think they will. They certainly shouldn't. So with that, I want to thank this team behind me for remaining firm on this. To come in here as a freshman on the Budget Committee and help get this resolution out and help pass the greatest tax reform in 3 decades, that's a good first term, and I'm proud to be here and proud to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason, and good luck with the Vikings. That was an unbelievable game, was it not? Every day we turn on the news, and what do we find? More employees are getting bonuses. Said more than 2 million. But there's one part, as you see these more than $1 billion put out, there's something more that is happening. The times that we find, just as Baltimore Gas and Electric, lowering their rates, passing on the tax benefits to all their customers. Then what did we just find last week? Not only were bonuses going out, but raises. So people were getting more. The minimum wage was being raised in so many companies. But maternity leave now is longer for thousands of Americans. That's much different than a crumb or Armageddon. That is the beginning of America's comeback. I know we have challenges before us this week. Fund the military. It is at a deadline. The Children's Health Insurance Program, CHIP. 2 times we have voted to move that off this floor. But both items, the Democrats have not only said no, they whipped their members to hold them back. We have states that are being challenged for their children's health. This is not a time to play politics. I know a lot of things have been said in the process. I am committed to solving our problem when it comes to DACA, border security, and chain migration. Throughout this weekend, I talked to all the players. I talked to Cornyn. I talked to Durbin. I even talked to Schumer, and I talked to Steny Hoyer. Our staffs have been continuing to meet. Today, the principals will get together. We want to be able to solve this problem. But the deadline this week is about the military and about the children. I hope when we go to the floor to have the vote, to continue to have government funded, that I don't look across and see what I saw the times before. I watched the leadership on the Democratic side, the same person who believed these were crumbs to the American public, actually holding her members back. Even those who want to vote for it, but would not release them to vote for it until Republicans had passed it. I would like to see us to work together to solve America's problems.
I, too, want to wish Jason good luck. If they're successful, I'm going to have to find some new jokes about the Vikings. Can I do it this one? Okay, I won't. All right. In respect. Look, after hearing the good news in recent weeks, there's one thing that is undeniable, and that is that tax reform is boosting America's economic confidence. Company after company has been announcing that we are having increased bonuses, increased wages, renewed investment in America, all because of tax reform. I was at my son's basketball game on Sunday, and a UAW worker from the Chrysler plant in Belvedere came up to me and said, "This is going to get me $4,000 in my paycheck." I thought this was only for the rich. I guess that's me now. I mean, this is working. It's just the beginning. At the heart of this law is really a lower tax burden for American families who are going to start seeing this relief very, very soon. Last week, the Treasury Department announced that it has adjusted the amount the IRS takes out of people's paychecks to account for this new law. It's estimated that 90% of wage earners in America will experience an increase in their take-home pay starting as soon as February. Let me just say that one more time. 90% of Americans' workers will see increased take-home pay as a result of the tax law starting in February. This is incredible. The typical family of 4 earning the median income of $73,000 will see a tax cut of $2,059. That's more money to pay down the mortgage, save for a rainy day fund, or take your kids, your family on vacation. This is real relief to real Americans, especially more than half of whom claim and say that and show that they're living paycheck to paycheck. Another huge benefit for American families, it's lower energy costs. Look, where I come from and where Jason comes from, it's pretty cold right now. Your energy costs are very high. And what we're seeing is all of these utility companies are now saying they're passing through the tax savings onto their ratepayers. So if you're low income, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, if you're having a hard time just heating your house, this is real relief that's real tangible. So we're seeing evidence that the tax bill is working in so many ways. Lower energy bills, bigger paychecks, more jobs, more bonuses, maternity leave. This is exactly why we did this, so that we can improve people's lives. There's one more point, and Kevin mentioned this. According to the Pentagon, just last year, we lost more American military members who died in training accidents than we did in combat last year. And we have combat across the globe. These deaths may have been preventable. And it all points back to the deterioration of our readiness and our military resources. Funding for modernizing the Army has been cut in half in just the past 8 years. Navy sailors are putting in 100-hour work weeks, and less than half of their aircraft are capable of flying. The number of fatal accidents or those resulting in the loss of aircraft for the Marines has doubled over the last decade. We have to reverse this trend. We have to stop putting these lives at risk, and we have to fix our national security. And that's why it's baffling to me that Democrats would be willing to block funding for our military over unrelated issues. I used to think that the Democrats thought the S-chip bill was bipartisan, that children's health insurance is a bipartisan bill. This was written by Republicans and Democrats. We've passed this extension twice this year. We're going to be bringing it to the floor again this week because real deadlines are occurring this Friday. And the real deadlines that occur this Friday are our men and women in uniform and children's health insurance in many states that will run out of money. And so that is why it's unconscionable to me that they would block funding for our military or cut off funding for these states that really will lose their funding for CHIP by playing these political games and tying them to unrelated issues. Questions?
Could you just give us a general timeline for how you see the immigration debate playing out? Obviously, it won't be done this week before the spending deadline, but do you see March as the deadline? Or is that,
look, I think that's the deadline we're all operating on the March, what is it, March 5th, I think? But look, these are talks that are occurring in earnest. We want to fix DACA. We want to fix DACA in a balanced way so that we don't have the same problem down the road. That's just pure common sense. That means a DACA solution that involves the security measures that make sure that we don't have another DACA problem down the road. That's purely common sense. The majority of Americans see it that way. And so it's perfectly reasonable that we address this in a more comprehensive way. Now, what Kevin just described to you is the fact that our leaders are meeting to discuss these things. Good faith negotiations are underway, and to push that aside and try and jeopardize funding for things like S-chip in our military, to me, makes no sense. Robert Perry, you never, ever ask a question at these things. Do you not have one?
No.
I always look for you. All right, Manu.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday, Steve Bannon angered both Republicans and Democrats alike on the House Intelligence Committee after the White House invoked executive privilege, said that he should not answer questions during the transition in his time at the White House. Is it appropriate, in your view, for the White House to invoke executive privilege and deny Steve
I'm not familiar with exactly what happened yesterday. I've been a little busy with some other tasks, but there has always been a tension on executive privilege between the legislative branch and the executive branch. This goes back to every administration. Obama exercised executive privilege. Bush did. Clinton did. That is a typical tension that you're going to have between the two branches of government. I don't know the specs on that.
Should Bannon answer
I don't know the specs. I don't know the specifics on it. I really just don't. Casey.
Do you have enough Republican votes to keep the government open this week? And can you look at a dreamer in the eye and promise them that you will put a standalone bill to help them, regardless of what else is included, on the floor of the House?
Look, we've been very clear. We want to see a DACA solution. But a DACA solution has got to be a balanced solution. A DACA solution has to be a solution that also not just treats the symptom, which DACA is, but the root cause of the problem in the first place. I feel that it makes no sense for Democrats to try and bring us to a shutdown, to try and cut off CHIP funding for the states that are running out of money, like Minnesota and Washington and Kentucky and other states. So I think cool heads hopefully will prevail on this thing.
Do you have
Andy.
Republican votes?
We haven't even whipped it yet. Andy.
Do you agree with Scott Walker that last night's results in this special election in Wisconsin were a wake-up call for Republicans? And is it evidence that a potential wave election is coming in November?
Well, I know Sheila Harzorf very, very well. I know this district fairly well. It's not my district. It's over in western Wisconsin. But typically we've held this seat, and we lost this seat last night. So, yeah, I think we should pay attention to it.
Last question.
Yeah.
Last month, leadership said that you just needed a few more weeks to negotiate a caps deal and a DACA deal. Are you confident that all you need this time?
Yeah, I think the caps deal is very, very close, and I think the Democrats are holding out on the caps deal because, excuse me, of these DACA negotiations. But I think the fact that we're in earnest in negotiating in good faith with our four leaders on DACA speaks to the fact that we want to see a solution, that we want to get this thing fixed. I mean, it's got to be a balanced bill. It's got to be, we will not bring up a DACA bill that the president doesn't support. What point would it be to bring a bill through here that we won't have signed into law by the president? So this has to be balanced. This isn't a one-way street. This has got to be balanced. It's got to be bipartisan. And the president has to support this for this to occur. And the president is being completely rational in that you want to fix DACA, but you also want to address the root cause problems so that we don't have a DACA problem in the future. I also think that the caps deal is in our interest. I think that it should be done and can be done. But for people to hold up funding for our military over these unrelated issues and for deadlines that don't even exist this Friday, that makes no sense to me. The federal government has many responsibilities, but its first, foremost, primary responsibility is to provide for the common defense. And when you see a situation where more men and women in our military are dying in training accidents than they are in combat, it's a serious situation. And to block funding for our military with a Friday deadline over unrelated issues just makes no sense to me. It's wrong. I'll leave it at that.
Can you give us a solid feel for where the president stands on these